Just a shade under 5 minutes. We made it there.
My goodness.
It's we have all these canned intros that I did a long time ago, and I just randomly just choose one, and that was just the one I happened to choose. And unfortunately, sorry, I didn't see there's a timestamp next to it, so apologies about that.
You should just have a reel of Blake's trouble with his internet and have that.
Well, could we do a DJ remix of my audio?
Yeah, we need a blooper reel. I mean, the problem is that people will come on and they'll be like, "Oh, here we go, 5 minutes of this again." But that's how we start every single one anyway.
Gotta give the people what they want.
That's right. They're starting to miss it.
Is that are they? I think they're maybe just missing me having a brain aneurysm, but that's about it.
I certainly miss it.
I'm glad we don't. It's been so much better. So, well, you guys ready to get into it?
Well, let's do it.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Let's do it.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another brand new episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of Bourbon. I'm Kenny Coleman.
Ryan Cecil here.
Fred Minnick.
And we are going to be doing another Bourbon Community Roundtable focused again on our favorite subject, the 3-tier system. Well, it's one of our favorite subjects, but this is the one that it brings out a lot of spicy subjects, a lot of spicy topics. And this is going to be a follow-on to last month's roundtable. Before we get started with that, let's go ahead with the other fellas in the roundtable. To my bottom left, Mr. Blake Riper himself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, everyone. Blake from Sealbox. Excited to be back talking 3-tier again. It seemed to kind of generate a lot of buzz and feedback, and I heard from a lot of different sides after the last episode. So I think it's gonna be pretty exciting to dive back into it. So happy to be here for number 112th in a row. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Just drop that little nugget for us. I really appreciate that.
And the only one without facial hair on this episode.
I know that's at the age of 40, it still grows in all white trashy, so I can't really do facial hair.
It's okay. Give it 2 more years. That's what it took for me. It's a continual progression as a guy as we get older and start getting having kids and stuff. It's we get into whiskey. Then we get into smoking meats. There's a little bit of World War II thrown in there, and then it comes growing beards. That's just part of the natural evolution.
True.
Yep.
It is. Very true.
And Nick.
Yeah, well, that's life here. So actually, I have had, this is about as low as my facial hair gets. Had a beard for like 15 years, shaved it once to a surprise to the family. My daughter, I think, was 3 at the time, came downstairs. She's like, "Oh, Daddy. No, that's bad, Daddy." So I'm going to have facial hair from here on out, I think. But anyways, Nick from Breaking Bourbon here, catching up. I was not on the last one, so excited to get into this spicy, controversial topic of the 3-tier system. So glad to be here.
Very good. Very good. So anybody that is unfamiliar, last time we did this, we kind of talked it was kind of some gripes about the 3-tier system. Fred had also kind of given a history about the 3-tier system, but we had kind of talked about the pros, the cons, and sort of the frustrations that we see as smaller brands and players inside here, and sort of where do we see the 3-tier system going. But throughout all that, we were getting bombarded with questions in the chat, and I said, all right, let's go ahead. We're going to have a follow-up to this one. We're going to be taking all your questions and going through them. And this is like I said, it's going to be fun to kind of see exactly from what you all think, and we're going to kind of throw the answers back at you. We did get upwards of like 30 questions. I've narrowed them down to probably between 5 and 10 is probably what we're going to get through, because I know how we like to ramble and talk. But you guys ready for the first one here?
We might have to cut it to 2 after that intro. That took up a lot of time.
Maybe.
Yeah, Blake's going to go smoke some meat later, so.
Yeah. Well, here, this first one's an easy one. So Liz asks, how can a consumer help their favorite spirits brands that are generally not available in their area to be picked up by a distributor in their area?
Ooh, that's a great question and a tough one. The easy answer is go to as many retail stores possible in the area that you shop in, and just keep hounding the store owner that you should have this brand. You should have this brand. Because if retailers don't know about you, and then then they'll once they start hearing that, then you hope they would talk to their distributor like, I keep getting requests for this brand. Have you heard of them? But that's an easy, simple answer that's probably not going to work, but hopefully somebody else has a better answer than I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a supply and demand thing. So I get it from the distributor's perspective where, they're not buying one bottle at a time. They've got to fill up a pallet or half pallet or whatever it may be. But honestly, while it may not be the best answer, I think that is the only answer, right? Like the distributor needs to hear from retailers, and retailers need to hear from consumers that there is people that want to buy this product. I mean, I'm sure not the only one here who it's like a retailer is like, yeah, I'll take 5 cases of it. Just send it. I'm like, well, we got to try to convince everybody to get on board and buy the rest. But I've seen it happen multiple times. And I think there are some ways around it with like LibDib and stuff. If retailers are getting enough people saying, hey, you should bring this in, they'll hopefully bring it in eventually. But I wish there was some better way of doing it, but I don't know what that would be.
Shop at
And I guess-
Steelbox.
Yeah, but that's the obvious answer. I think the thing we also have to explain what LibDib is. For anybody that doesn't know, this is another kind of smaller avenue to market. I believe this is through Republic. Is that who runs
Correct.
LibDib? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So Republic started this thing as, trying to quote unquote revolutionize the system for smaller smaller players, where they are essentially becoming a middleman, where if a store wants to order, say, just a case of your product, well, you can go ahead and you can send a case of your product to LibDib or through this system. But what we found is it's not really the most advantageous way of doing things, because, well, now you're paying UPS shipping on top of it, and it's actually it's actually cheaper to ship like 200 or 100 cases on a pallet when you start breaking down the math of versus it paying freight costs than what it is to just ship, say, like 4 or 5 cases via UPS, because you're gonna spend almost just as much money to ship it freight. So
but it's something though, right? It's something. It's like in this archaic system.
I should also mention that as the producer, we're on the hook for paying the shipping cost to get it to them, versus vice versa. The distributor is responsible for picking up the cases and they pay for the shipping.
Yeah, but going to what I was saying is like it's something. It's a solution in an archaic system that doesn't have many people trying to create solutions. So, but to Liz's
It's a bad
question,
solution. Put it there.
But it's something.
Fight.
It's
Sorry,
still
I'm
there.
gonna say it's like it's mostly for people, I think, that would just want to sell single barrels. So you can sell a single barrel to a particular store. Let's say that like we're not open in California yet. There's somebody that wants to go ahead and sell a single barrel in California. Yeah, you can do that, but it just depends on the state, and then whether you have to open up the state and then file reports every single month.
I'm just saying, like, if you're if you are a single customer and you're a brand and you don't want to fully open up another state, LibDib's great. It gets you to that single customer that you need. You can deal with the extra costs if that's what you want, but it's a solution in an archaic system that doesn't offer solutions. But to Liz's question specifically about how can someone get a small brand into a distributor and distribution network in their market. Here's the thing: going to the liquor store and asking for it is obviously that's smart. That helps. But truth is, most of the liquor stores, you unless you're talking to the manager or the owner, it's going to stop there with the clerk, and they're going to go home and put their Pop-Tart in the toaster and watch Days of Our Lives and forget about you. So they're not going to go through that extra system, that extra step to take your request to a retailer. So what I would actually advise is some kind of creative social media effort to get your favorite product in there. And maybe have go to store, like walk into every liquor store, like, hey, with the video, and do a reel of like, hey, do you have, I've got this small brand right here, Detling. Like, hey, do you have Detling? Like, oh no, I've never heard of it. And then boom, 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 boom. And then you can just use that as an opportunity with your social media. Say like, well, Detling's actually really great. It's from Alabama. I want it. You don't have it. Someone carry it. I think social media could be a very powerful tool for helping a small distiller from a consumer's coming from the consumer's vantage point. I think that could be very powerful in a market.
That's pretty good advice, Fred.
I'm trying.
You try.
Great buzz, man. I hear that. And, to the point of the retailer, the store, clearly you got to get to the manager, got to get to the owner. But, if it's something that's already has buzz around it, a lot of these people at stores are not on social media the way that we are. They're not connected in that space the way that we are. They're running their store. They're busy doing that. They may not even be bourbon enthusiasts themselves. They might be into wine or just into the running their business, right? So point out, for example, because we see this all the time, point out if something's being talked about online. I mean, just this morning, at 9:00 this morning, 7 new bottles to review showed up, right? So what are all these brands looking for? They're looking for that talk. They're looking for the mind share. And if you can go to a retailer and bring that and say, look, this is being talked about it now. It may not be available. I think it's going to be a great product. I've had it. It's very good. You should ask about it. Now you maybe have put some in their ear that's going to be effective, and do that a few times, throw that in, with a few, do some of the social media, like Fred said. So now you got some buzz locally. And, I think that's going to drive that ultimately, because I think these distributors, they want the brands, they want it to kind of pull in. They don't want to do that work until they see that, see it being asked for. And it's got to start somewhere, especially with these very small brands.
Oh, for sure. All right, let's go on to the next one here, because I think we're going to start building up the spice level here. Okay. So Chris asks, in your view, what would you have to happen politically or economically for a meaningful reform of the 3-tier system to gain traction?
Ooh.
Oh man, that's a book.
Don't go at once.
Man,
everybody's like
off on this
tiptoeing.
one. I mean,
This is where we need the lawyer. Honestly, this is Brian's sweet spot. This is he'd be good here.
if you look at anything where there's a major reform or change, there has to be some big movement behind it. And I hate to say, like, COVID was kind of a bit of that movement. Everybody's stuck at home. Nobody can get out. They want stuff delivered. We saw some of the things lifted, eased, whatever you want to call it, with shipping and other things. Some of those got extended. New York, I know California has just extended their shipping of craft spirits in the state. But honestly, there's just got to be some major economic interest behind whatever you want the change to be to really make that happen. And I think that's always the roadblock here, is the economic interest is not aligned with change for the most part. But I think it's an overall, not to like just draw direct comparisons to marijuana, but that didn't have some major economic force behind it until people started realizing, oh, you can tax it. People make money off of these farms and everything else, and they started getting behind it. So I think even something like that is, it starts off with the consumer of, hey, we want this. And then it's like, oh, we can figure out the tax side. All of a sudden it starts to just slowly move. I mean, you think about, even I give the comparison of Uber all the time. Uber was, illegal tax service for most of the cities it was in, but consumers were so in demand of like, no, we just want this. We want to pull up an app on our phone, have a driver here in 30 seconds. And they just got so big that the laws ended up changing kind of post their launches in cities. I think even something like that, like, it could really be consumer driven. I think that is the most likely potential way forward with some of this. And I'm not saying a complete overhaul of the 3-tier system. I'm just saying some carve outs to let people get the bottles what they want. If enough consumer demand grows for those things, it'll slowly start to move. Like people will start to back it. People be less opposed to change, and it's just a slow creep.
If doctors can prescribe opioids online and the DEA have a process for that product to be shipped to someone's house and it get to that person legally, why can't we have national shipment of alcohol? I understand that every state wants its VIG, every state wants its taxes. There can be a way that every state gets its taxes. And oh, by the way, the liquor stores and the wholesalers are like, well, what about our jobs? We got to keep our jobs. Well, how about this? Every liquor store in the country can ship. How about that? If we could do that, I mean, I'm telling you, there are so many people in Kentucky that are moving on from bourbon because they can't get what they want. There's a bottle that they want on the seal box right now that they can't have shipped to them because the owner of Sealbox, who I'm sure will attest to this, will get a letter from the attorney general or someone in the Kentucky ABC saying like, no shippy here. But yet that consumer who loves bourbon wants that bottle and cannot get it in a liquor store in this town. So I just think that the reason why we won't see that is because no one at the very top is taking this to the politicians. The pharmaceutical industry was like, oh, well, you know what? We got to get Viagra to Uncle Tom over there for his pee-pee. So we got to make sure that these laws get passed, right? We got to make sure these laws get passed and these things get shipped. No one is doing that at the highest level to make that happen for alcohol.
Well, the people at the highest level are tied. They're directly tied to the middle level, so the big brands and the distributors are kind of, they're the ones at the top. So they're not going to be the ones going to advocate for that type of change. And so, as Blake mentioned before, it has to be consumer driven. Politicians are busy. They have a ton of problems, ton of things to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And if they're not hearing complaints from constituents or the people that vote them in, they're not going to deal with it. We've had many people from lobbyists to attorneys that told us this. It's like, if people want real change, they're going to have to start like reaching out to congressmen, congresswomen, people that need to make the change and make them aware that this isn't a problem. But I just don't think that's happening. A lot of people complain about it, bitch about it on, social media or various podcasts or whatever. But until like politicians, it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of effect. You got to keep hammering them and make them realize that this is an issue. But, the pharmaceutical industry, it's different because they weren't totally in bed with the system that's making them succeed. So that's what's kind of hard or tricky about the system as it is.
I mean, opioids had their own thing going on. I mean, there was all kinds of Netflix documentaries on sort of the crisis and how people were skirting around that, and there was all kinds of people were just writing prescriptions left and right trying to make all that happen. And to be fair, I mean, it's essentially abuse, and not to say that there's no abuse that happens in this system. I think there is somewhat of a parallel path that can kind of be seen between these two. But to reiterate what Blake said, I think at the end of the day, it's all about the finance side. And unfortunately, you're going to be stuck with the people that have the lobbying power and the money to be able to do that, to continue to squash the arguments that we're having today that are trying to be constructive, because they don't want anything to happen to their existing turf. The only thing that I think that we will see change ever in the future is if by chance this might be happening right now, right? And that's probably what the whole clause of marijuana is. We might be seeing some of that happening, where you're starting to see the pocketbooks of all these big middlemen starting to get really kind of nervous because, oh, what's happening? Well, you have all these THC drinks that are coming in, and now all of a sudden, yes, we have the AGs that are saying, no, we need to go ahead, we need to regulate this, we need to stop this. And I'm sure that they're right there behind them going, yes, absolutely. Like, we definitely need to stop this, right? Because all it's doing is hurting our business at the end of the day.
Yeah, or we need to regulate it to fit it into our model so we can make money off of it. And once it's regulated and people know the rules, then they can go invest in be in that market. But you have to show people that there's a way to make money, giving brands the outlet to ship, like as Fred mentioned, whether it's from the distillery or through a store in the certain state. You have to show them that there is an opportunity to make money in this system.
And the problem is consumers don't, as a group, recognize that there's a problem and don't advocate. There's no advocate group for consumers. If you look at wine, 2005 court case, Granville v. Held, that really changed the dynamic of wine in terms of how that's distributed. That same thing did not happen with the spirits industry. And if you look back at that, it's really a question mark why that wasn't just aggregate between the two, right? It stuck strictly with wine. But what we saw was that parallel direct-to-consumer shipping that really took place. And as it turns out, that doesn't account for a huge percentage of wine, but that really helped the wine industry significantly to do that. And I really think that as you look at the spirits industry and you look at the distributors there, you're not going to fight City Hall. You are not going to come in and completely upend and uproot a system that's there and actually does have a number of positive attributes to it, to be fair. There are, positive attributes to how it works. The problem is when it doesn't work for the small guys and there's really no competition, and or somebody's signed up and they're stuck dealing with the distributor and they can't get out of that relationship, those are problems. You open up direct to consumer, which I really think if you had an advocacy group behind that and set some safeguards and limits on that to some degree, you could have a whole parallel system that would allow small guys to get in, get a leg up, test their product, test the market, get to it, hustle. And then when they became big enough and needed the distributors are still there, ready, willing, and able to take on a great brand that's going to help them. So I think what it is, it's the consumer group, it's the advocacy from the smaller brands who really want it, to not fight what's there, but to work with it and, work to the side of it, basically, with the right voice and with that targeted goal of that direct to consumer.
All great points.
Very good. Very, very good. Well, I guess to kind of flow along with, who is more in responsibility. So Jeff Aldis asked another question here is, which group bears greater responsibility for preventing change in the alcohol distribution system? Do you think it's the large alcohol producers or do you think it's the major distributors?
I'd
Both
say
together.
that the large, I would
Yeah.
say that,
All the above.
yeah, but
Option C.
But let's take a look though at who's actually done a lot of work in the last 20 years. The large companies the large distillers have done a really great job cutting into the 3-tier system to carve out more money for them. Like 15 years ago, like Kenny, Ryan, you all could not have your business. You could not sell, things by the drink at your business. You couldn't serve cocktails. You couldn't have a restaurant. If you were associated with the distillery, there's so many things you couldn't even sell your own bottles out of your distillery until the last 20 years. I mean,
I think those last like 4 or 5, actually, 6 years, maybe something like that. It's relatively soon.
Unique bottles or whatever, but there's been so many laws that the large distillers have passed, and the Kentucky Distillers Association has done a great job of, fighting in state legislature here in Kentucky, but that's a state thing. And I think Kentucky's unique, but we saw it in Tennessee. Tennessee had a lot of help from Chattanooga pushed for a lot of whiskey laws to be passed, but Jack Daniels was right there too, like opening up doors across the entire state to help that state have more distillery license. So meanwhile, all the distributors have done, what I have seen in the last 25 years, is fight for their area, right? Just continue to fight for their area. And that's what they want to do. And that's why, Kenny, I actually look at LibDib as being a solution in this scenario. And I looked at Drizzly as a solution. And it just seems like there's been less of that and more of fighting over their individual piece of the pie. So I would say the distillers been very active of trying to carve out distributors, which in the end is kind of the battleground that has been shaped. And we are, in my opinion, the victims of those two not getting along.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. I honestly feel that you have 5 parties that control everything, right? It's your Brown-Forman, it's your Sazerac, it's your Heaven Hill, it's your Diageo, and let's throw in Constellation and Campari, right? It's the easiest way to kind of look at this is like they get to dictate and shape exactly how that middle tier is run. The best way to look at this is what happened when Brown-Forman and Tito's pulled out of RNDC and the West Coast. What happened? It fucking crumbled, right? I mean, that whole organization of RNDC, I mean, it just got gutted. I mean, at that point, you lost your cash cow, and they went somewhere else. So when I look at this, is like, you know, these large organizations, they're the ones that control pretty much everything, right? If they have, I would say they have even more control, maybe even over the Southern Glaciers or the RNDCs of the world. Now that I think about it, is because if they want to take their product and move somewhere else, they'll do it. And you, as a distributor, better start learning to either bend over backwards or figuring out how you're going to shave pennies off of your margin so you can keep them happy, so you can run volume for them, right? And I think that's, now that I'm kind of thinking in that position, it's like they're the ones that kind of hold a lot of power in here. Now, is it going to change the distribution system? No, I think they're just working in the confines and the guardrails of what's being presented to them. But I think they hold a lot of cards in their hand.
And what's interesting about that too is the way a lot of this developed initially was the large producers were viewed as some of the issue, right? So distributors coming on initially when this whole thing started were small, and they were worried about producers owning the whole distribution chain all the way down to the restaurants and the bars, right? And so they said, we have to prevent this from happening. And now what's happened is you've gotten distributors that have gotten a lot bigger, a lot more power in some areas, in some states, difficult for the producers to get away from them, you know, not an easy task, as I'm sure some of you will attend to. So you've got this weird power dynamic that's just so ingrained and entrenched right now. I was thinking it may go back and forth, and it might be regional. Who has more power in a given region? Who has more power given what the laws and dynamics are in that specific area? And that might vary to a degree.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Blake.
It actually, you know, it's actually a great question. And I think it's something we didn't talk about on the first episode, because, you know, we talked about the problems with distribution at some point, and I think we're clear, like, there are a lot of great distributors out there, but I think these big spirit producers and companies probably drive a lot more than we even recognized in the first episode doing this, because, you know, I get it. If I won't say a spirits brand as a example, but if somebody who is $100 million customer of yours is like, you better get me on every store shelf, you better have pull through, we've got our sales team out there, you better do this and that. And then we come along and it's like, hey, could you also sell us, and we'll be like a $50,000 a year brand for you. And, you know, big guy at $100 million a year is just, you know, twisting their arm at every little detail and every penny. That's a lot more leverage. And that's where a lot of the, you know, probably commentary comes from when we say, oh, they don't care about small brands, they don't sell small brands, they don't push small brands, this and that. And that's the reason, is you've got these behemoths out there that are really dictating who they sell, what they sell. And it's like, oh, you don't want to do exactly as we tell you, Mr. Distributor. Guess what? We're moving to the next one down the road. And because they're going to do exactly what we say for 0.5% point less, or 0.5 point less. Like that is a lot of control that a lot of these people have. And I can't find this statistic, but it's something, you know, between 4 to 5 brands, it makes up like 40% of the alcohol sales. If you just said, okay, you know, we all know Tito's, you probably throw Jim Beam in there, you know, Jose Cuervo or whatever, or maybe Casamigos, the biggest selling tequila. You can pick out 4 to 5 bottles, and it makes up a huge amount of volume in the alcohol business. And I don't blame them. They've got the power, they've got the control, they have such a huge market pull that really starts to throw off the whole system when you've got a few players calling all the shots about how things should happen around the country.
Totally. But on the flip side, I mean, there are some great small to mid-sized distributors that will, focus on small craft brands. They're not a volume player. They'll work on higher margins. They are out there advocating for you, but with that, they don't have necessarily the sales team or the resources to grow like a Southern or a Republic. But those guys are just going to be solely focused on those, 4 or 5 major brands. But two, you've had over the last, I don't know, say 4 or 5 years, you've had a ton of consolidation of distributors, where all these companies have kind of merged or taken over to reduce competition. And then, so it, as a brand, there's less options there. I can't remember the numbers, but like you rewind like 10 years ago, there was probably like 3,500 or 4,000 different distributors throughout the US. And now it's down to like sub 1,000 or something. And so like, it's just all this consolidation and stuff has made it tougher too, where smaller brands just can't get the attention. And, that's, and all this topic stuff, like I love this topic. It's great. The 3-tier system works well in some ways. It's just it's not a fair marketplace for every single brand. And I think that's where we're coming from. No way Jim Beam or Heaven Hill or even us wants to go out and deliver product to every single store, every single account, this or that. But, there's definitely, we haven't dealt with about talked to a ton of brands lately that they just can't even get distribution right now in a state because distributors are like, nope, we have enough. We've consolidated. We're cutting brands. We're not taking any new ones on, this and that. And so, that's just, and I don't know who can change the policy between those two, but that's kind of the system that's leaving out the smaller brands.
And it would seem that if the producers wanted to end the system, they would have enough power to be able to do that. But the distributors rely on the system. Their business doesn't exist without the system. And so it's an unusual power dynamic where that push and pull has got to be a constant struggle between the two of them.
100%.
I think what Sazerac to me has so much power in this, and they have flexed it. When they pulled from RNDC and went with all those beer distributors across the country, they showed that they basically put it on the table and said, "This is proof we don't need you." I don't know where things are with that lawsuit between the two of them. Gosh, I wish Brian was on the show today, but like for real, like you nailed it, Kenny. Brown Forman and Tito's and Sazerac, like when they want to flex, and if they flex in unison, they could absolutely crush distributors. And I guarantee you, they fear that way more than shipping, way more than shipping.
And so this next one, I've got an idea, and it kind of plays into this question. Is from Michael Buchanan saying, how many jobs would be lost getting rid of the middleman, and is that even a concern? So I don't think the system's not going anywhere. We understand that this middle layer it serves a purpose. It's not going to go anywhere. Now, if all of a sudden we said reform is here, anybody can go out and you can sell directly to retailers, and you don't need to go through a distributor or through a 3-tier model to make that happen. Let's say that happens. Well, the concern is obviously you're going to see some people attempt to be able to try and do that layer of delivery. You will end up having a lot of issues. One, namely, we kind of talked about in the first one, is that a really good role of the distributor is that they carry a library of products that they deal with. And that person can go and hit, multiple accounts in a single day, and they can go and figure out how to get restocks of everything. To have every brand individually go do that, damn near impossible. Now, on the other side of why I kind of thought this was really interesting when we started talking about the logistics side and, do the big brands need distributors? Well, I don't know. because and I've gone back and forth and said, do they want to be in that game? Do they want to be in the game of delivering and logistics? Well, they're doing this to try to shave percentage points off. And let's just say that average, you're between 25 to 35% margin on most products that you're doing. Let's say
but for big brands, you're probably like 15, 16. Yep.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say you're probably under 20, right? That's what I was going to go with. So you're always looking to sit there and try to shave as much off as possible. Well, what if you're able to shave that down to 5%? Because all you're doing, you already have the salespeople in the market. All you're doing is essentially building getting a warehouse and some trucks. I think, and I truly believe this, that if those big companies wanted to do their own delivery, they certainly could. And this then opens up that middle layer to be advocates for all the mid-tier and smaller size brands, instead of actually having to waste all their time sitting there trying to worry about buzz balls or how much Jim Beam white label they can sell, or whatever kind of vodka is the hot thing that's being pushed by whatever these large organizations. You remove them out of the equation, they're no longer able to throw around tons and tons of money. Now it's a bunch of small players trying to get into this game. Who knows? That could actually make almost a level playing field.
So that's an interesting comment. It's almost the opposite of the open up direct to consumer on that front. Instead what you're saying, if I'm hearing it right, is basically open up the big end, allow them to go off and do their own thing. That way the distributors who the small brands absolutely need, that they can't build out and do what they're doing, and not anytime soon, would be able to utilize the distributors effectively. Right. I think that's a fascinating concept, Kenny.
I mean, at the end of the day, you become a logistics company. There's a ton of them out there. It's not hard to do. You can do it. It just takes some time and infrastructure to build it.
Look at Amazon. Now there's multiple shipping facilities for Amazon. It's all Amazon. Amazon has replaced UPS. It's all Amazon vans now, delivery trucks now, all electric delivery trucks in my area. They've basically taken that over at this point. It's all more or less controlled by them. And I think there's a little overflow that UPS handles as a general rule of thumb in the area. I would imagine most big cities look a similar way as that. But, can these big producers do that? The question, do they want to do that? Do they think there's enough margin for that build out, or are they nowhere near the scale and size that they would need to be? And then if they did do that, would we see more conglomeration of these companies where they're, in order to grow and keep doing what they do, they need to keep buying brands? So now where you have a handful of major brands, that becomes two, or major players, and they own just about every brand. So you go on the shelf and you're like, oh geez, half of these are this company, half of those are those company, and there's a few other little guys in the middle. I could see somebody making a case to say, actually, that's why we don't want that to happen. Fascinating concept.
I was fascinated by Michael's question about jobs, because this is one of the key arguments to keep the system as it is, or at least close to it. And so I asked Super Grok what the jobs were, and it came back very quickly. Across beer, wine, and spirits, there are between 250,000 and 300,000 specifically wholesaler jobs. And as you mentioned, Kenny, a lot of it is just tied up into the transportation and logistics of it. So warehouse operations and truck drivers. Also, they represent about 40% of the jobs that are out there. Sales and marketing, 30%, and then management is 20%. That's a lot of management, actually.
There's always a heavy middle layer in there.
But I found that interesting, because if you would have asked me to guess, I would have guessed a lot more. So, that number actually kind of surprised me.
I mean, I think you would definitely see a hit at the sales level. That there's a lot of salespeople in this, and I think the system's actually trying to cut out the salespeople. You start to see like distributors investing in like online ordering with where a store no longer has to order from a rep. They can just go into a system and order what they want what happens then is like stores are just they're not gonna get introduced to new products. They're just gonna go with what's selling. You know, if I'm constantly burning through 50 cases of high noons, I'm gonna hit that button. But you kind of see that in the distributor level that they're automating the sales process, which is not good for brands either.
So I would say on the job side, I think what we were originally talking about of like just giving craft, independent bottlers, smaller producers a way into the market, I don't think that affects jobs at all. Actually, I think the distributors and everybody else continue as they are now. Most of the brands we're talking about to have some sort of carve out aren't taking a lot of the time of the distributor for the most part anyway. So I don't think that would change anything if direct to consumer got more broadly accepted. But I also do disagree with Kenny's point on, because I guarantee you the big guys have run the numbers on this, and maybe they just thought it isn't worth the fight. Maybe this is what Sazerac's play has been all along of, hey, we're going to go get these small beer distributors. We're going to hire our own sales team. We're going to have them pay us whatever, $10 a case and essentially self-distribute. I think distribution is way more complicated than we're making it out to say like, oh, it's just a logistics thing. You hire a few people. Like, there's not an Amazon in the alcohol game. I would say there's not somebody who has, they don't have AWS pumping billions of dollars in cash into the system so that they can build out all these programs and delivery trucks and logistic warehouses that can just pump things through there. They don't have that business model set up. So I think it would just be a nightmare if one of the big players said, you know what, we're going to lobby, we're going to have an exclusion for ourselves, we're going to set up distribution in each state, and instead of paying a distributor, we're all going to do it in-house. Like, I think that's a nightmare that would blow up in their face, and within 2 to 3 years they'd be back at a distributor. I could be wrong, but that is my hunch on that. Like, it's way more complicated.
Doesn't like even Coke and Pepsi, like, don't they use distributors in each different distributors in each market? Like
McDonald's, well, a lot of the Coke and Pepsi, like Coke will have their own bottling facilities that's owned by somebody else and distributes in that market, or bottles under their recipe and sends it out to them. But McDonald's has major distributors across the country. Every fast food chain does. And I think there is a reason for that. Like, this isn't an alcohol thing. Like, the distribution, the middle layer plays a very important role. And it's also taking the liability off of them. Like, why would some major spirits producer want to take all of that, liability on, all the additional asset cost and everything else? Because when they ship it to that distributor, they're still getting paid in 30 days. And now they've got to go collect from every individual retailer instead of getting one payment from at most 50 states. They go from having 50 customers to now they have 50,000. I don't know. What would that even look like for them collecting payments from retailers across the state? They don't want to deal with that. They want something that, hey, that's on the distributor. If the corner liquor store can't pay me my $2,000 this month, I'm not knocking on, some billion-dollar company's not going and knocking on their door and it's like, hey, you ready to pay us now? It's like, no, it's on the distributor. They better collect. So I think that's just a whole other factor that they would have to figure out and be pretty complicated.
Yeah, I know we've used the word Amazon a lot here, but maybe we should give DHL a shot.
Oh, I thought you were going to say maybe we should bring Jeff Bezos on to see if he has any thoughts on
if he has any interest in tackling this space.
Yeah, right.
He tried. He
I'm
tried.
Sure I
think
Amazon. Years ago,
Amazon,
we were trying to get a lobbyist on the show. I remember that.
Yeah. They the Bezos were investors in the spirits network, so they were looking into it heavily 10 years ago, and it just they found very quickly that this is you need more than an army, right, to crack this code. It takes a lot.
It does. All right. Time for two more, and this is gonna be a fun one. This comes from Cesar. He says, given the number of distillers in a market, why not gather them all as representatives, maybe like a distiller society, to go up against distributor lobbyists? Which you kind of have that today with the KDA, but
I was gonna say
they
Discus is very much about that.
yeah, but
Well-
it's not the same fighting power, I think.
Yeah.
Behind it, and it's to be fair, the KDA and Discus, they are backed by the major organizations that go and pay the majority of those bills, right? Versus let's say you have the top 5% that takes care of the 95%. I think that's the best way to say it.
So I would say the best way I can explain this is to give a college football analogy. So for those who don't follow college football, I apologize, but it's the best thing I've got for you. The SEC and the NCAA are at odds against each other all the time. The SEC wants more. Most people are tuning into college football to see an SEC team or a Big Ten team, occasionally a Big 12 team. Probably not my Oklahoma State Cowboys, but they're the diehards were tuning in. They have to work with the NCAA, but every year there's talks of the 5 top conferences breaking away from the NCAA to have their own power football conference. So that's essentially what the lobbyist groups are like with the wholesalers. They have to work together. Their basic fundamental purpose is to ensure that we don't have another prohibition. That's like the thing they can agree on. They're all trying to fight the health zealots out there that are wanting to get cancer labels on it. They're all fighting the same fight on drinking in moderation. And so they kind of like, they're right there working on that together. After that, they're fighting each other in every single battleground they can, right? It's a weird relationship, because on the very broad things of like, should people be allowed to drink, they're together on. Everything after that, it's a fight.
And with the distillers that we're talking about in the market to create a distiller society, this and that, they don't have a ton of cash to go form together and have enough cash reserves to go really fight this battle like seriously. We could band together and get our pitchforks and our flaming torches and go step, but it all comes down to money, and there's no way, even with there's 2,500 craft distilleries now in the U.S. I think after that report where there was like 4,000, I don't know. But anyways, that's just not enough because you're strapped for cash just trying to make ends meet. To put even more cash to go lobby against it, it's just not a good use of resources.
Very good. All right, you guys ready for the last one here? All right, so Chris asked, if the 3-tier system disappeared tomorrow, who would adapt faster? Heritage brands with deep pockets or craft distilleries that already know how to hustle? I like this one.
Oh, I love that question. That's a great question. I think who comes out of that first, I mean, just off the top, I think the craft distilleries who know how to hustle, I think they have more to gain and less to lose in that type of a situation. Whereas the big brands, I mean, we just talked about, with the concept of basically spinning up distribution, they have a lot of product to move. This is heavy, reasonably fragile product. It takes up space. It'd be very difficult to suddenly have to deal with all that on your own. On the craft side, yeah, I think price is going to go up just because now you're shipping smaller quantities. You're having to deal with that, but you spin up direct to consumer. You spin up and you get to some big retailers and you figure out that process, and you just don't have as much product to move. I think you're going to see advantage craft, smaller guys ready to hustle in that situation.
Yeah, I'll take the counter position here. I think the heritage guys still winning that battle, and mainly just because it's a matter of resources. Like if you told me all 50 states were open and everything else, and I feel like you're doing this for a long time, I have connections in different states and all that, I'd still be like, do I just go in a phone book and start pulling retailers' names that I can now ship to? But you go to a Sazerac and they've got 23 reps in the state of Michigan, 30 reps in the state of Florida, or whatever it is. Or okay, boots on the ground, go get your orders in and everything else. I think the Heritage guys still went out. I think the game to be played now is just online, attention, capital, whatever you want to call it, where how many consumer eyeballs can you get on you? And that's where I think craft is getting a much better foothold over the big guys. We've all been in this long enough to see how this thing goes through cycles where it's like Pappy starts popping up online and it gets big in Facebook and the straight bourbon forum. And then it's the next one. And we've seen that happen 20, 30 times now. Craft and, smaller producers are much faster to get into consumers' hands. And that's how they start building momentum. But if it was just like total wipe out the whole system, I think the Heritage guys still went out, unfortunately.
I think it's all about demand, right, Blake? You're just like the Heritage guys you think are winning out because they're the ones who have built the demand. They've got the little horsey. They've got the old man smoking a cigar on their labels. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I mean, I think they've got the brand awareness. I mean, that's such a huge thing, talking with consumers. And it's like, oh, well, I've heard of a few of these brands that you sell, but man, it's kind of hard for me to just take a gamble on a bottle for $60 whenever Henry McKenna 10-year sitting there for, $50, or Buffalo Trace is now in a lot of places for $29. You're still battling that same consumer mindset of, will they, take the risk, switch over, or give something new a shot?
So
because
I'll push back on that because, like, if the system crumbles, let's say it disappears tomorrow, the majority of the money for marketing that has built that awareness, that has got people into the liquor store, looking at a poster, buying a product, that's going to be going away. The marketing money that's going into those stores is going to be gone. And so that's why I think that the smaller guys, the blenders, the independent distillers or independent bottlers, I think that their savviness and their for them to sell a bottle, to sell a case, I mean, they're fighting for every meal out there, these smaller guys. I think if you take away the system that has made those big companies big, I think the smaller guy, wins a lot of those hand-to-hand combat opportunities inside the liquor store.
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm cheering for the Russians in Rocky IV or anything, but I'm just being a little bit realist. But no, I mean, it is a good point. There's a lot of marketing dollars that pumps in that drives a ton of that. Like, is the local liquor store now going to buy 50 cases of some random thing if he doesn't have to anymore to get an allocation of 3 bottles of something else? Like, if that all goes away, that does level the playing field a bit.
Yeah, but that all comes from the brands, though. That's not coming. I mean, some will say it's coming from distributors, but I don't think so. I think it's coming from the brands and the house of brands because, somebody like Brown-Forman or Sazerac or whatever, they have a portfolio of brands, and they're like, well, this one's not doing well, but we have this thing that is doing well. We can use that as a carrot to help leverage this. And so that's going to come from the brand side, not necessarily the distributor side.
And it's also who wins initially and who wins in the long term. And that might be a different answer because I think initially it's the craft. I think long term, though, you give enough time, you let the big guys reorganize, figure it out, consolidate. Then I think you might even have a bigger problem on your hands after that.
Yeah. You got a lot of smart people working for these big brands,
But they're going to need time, though. They're not going to be able to react to that, I don't think, in a very short amount of time.
No, it's the same analogy we use all the time. It's, trying to steer the Titanic, and it's going to be a very hard thing to do. It will take them a long time to be able to adapt to something like that. A smaller player obviously can turn something around in probably a week, maybe less. It also would bring a lot of new opportunity for software to come in and help revolutionize this entire process as well. I think that's the hardest thing that we deal with on a day-to-day basis is everybody has disparate systems. Nothing talks to each other except the PDF that you have to email between everybody, and then they ingest that email and then it goes in their system. It's like there should be something that is a little more simple that can make that happen. But obviously there's going to be opportunity if that ever did happen, albeit in the end, I'll still root for the little guy, even though Blake's probably right that there's just too many boots on the ground and too much manpower behind it. So it's kind of like, it's we're getting harder. Like I take this from a technology realm. It's like we all grew up in the era where Google and Facebook have become, and Amazon have become so big. Like, will we see another one of those companies in our lifetime because of the revolution that we've all gone through? And will there be another evolution or revolution like that of technology or whatever, where we'll see another company come in that becomes just as big as them? I don't know, because they're now so big that they're going to gobble up everything underneath of it. So it's the same exact thing. Like the bigger are always just going to get bigger.
Yeah, but at the same time, you would be like, oh, UPS and FedEx have it, and then Amazon comes in. And so it's like there's always going to be somebody to disrupt an industry. I'm not smart enough to figure out what's the one that's going to change this industry,
And never forget the dynamics of the world have a big impact on this industry. Anytime there is war, the bourbon distillers end up really impacted by it. Like there's not been a single international conflict that hasn't changed the way the industry operates. So, we're talking about it from a position of what's happening in the world right now, and everything could change tomorrow. It's such a weird industry, and it's so, covering it for 20 years, studying it, the history of it, and reading transcripts over the years. I am convinced that there is not a more complicated business than the whiskey business. It is
100%
fascinating.
I can attest to that. I mean,
that's a t-shirt right there. That's
Who doesn't like a challenge, right?
yeah.
You get to live it every day.
And it's like the more we sit and discuss this, I'm like, obviously there's holes and there's things that are broken about the system that need to be fixed. And I do think DTC is like a huge part that we need to keep advocating for smaller brands. But at the same time, it is so complicated that it's going to be hard for smaller brands to navigate that complication. And a lot of and I'm just sitting here thinking, a lot of the problems that craft distillers face and why the 3-tier distribution system doesn't work for them is a branding awareness type factor. And, whereas the big brands, they can benefit from it because they have that awareness, they have that consumer pull through, they have that draw. But you do have the thing that's getting left behind is smaller producers that do have an audience. You might not have a massive audience in Idaho, but you have 100 or 200 passionate fans. How do you get product legally to those 100, 200 people that really want your product? And it doesn't have to necessarily go through the typical system. I think the 3-tier distributions works, and mostly there's some problems, but we just got to have a way for smaller brands to be able to reach the consumers that desire their products.
All right. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Thank you, Ryan, for being the voice of reason, or Mr. Rogers of bourbon, if you will, for making it very, very nice and calm.
I hung up my jacket and put on my sweater, right now.
There you go. Put on your loafers now.
That's right.
Well, that's going to do it. This is going to wrap it up. I think this has been a fun conversation. Thank you to everybody that submitted questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. I chose some that I thought were very intriguing that would be fun to kind of go over. And who knows, maybe we'll do this again in a year, and we'll ask for some more questions and some things like that as well. Well, let's go ahead and let's start closing out. And Blake, go ahead and run it first.
Yeah, Blake from Sealbox. Always fun to be here. Another great one, and I think most can see just how passionate and invested, involved everyone on this panel is in this industry and world. And we want to see it better. We want to see more options out there, get consumers and enthusiasts the bottles they want, and that's ultimately what this is about. And so it's fun to come on here and discuss and come up with some new ideas and answers. So thanks for having me.
And Nick.
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe 2026 is 12 BCRs, and let's fix the 3-tier system. We could just, we'll be the voice of reason for the world that needs it. But anyways, Nick from Breaking Bourbon, tons of fun. Actually, great conversation. This is not a topic I typically discuss or write about on Breaking Bourbon. So actually a lot of fun to have this discussion, and some absolutely fantastic questions coming through from you guys. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And Four Roses will finally get acquired. So if that can happen, and Fred Mick's been predicting that for years, then the changes can happen next year.
Yes, the Four Roses acquisition that will happen hopefully this year will go down as one of my greatest predictions of the last decade.
Oh, geez. All right. Well, that's going to be it for this Bourbon Community Roundtable. Thank you for everybody that tuned in. If you want to make sure that you are part of the next one, go ahead, subscribe to our newsletter over at bourbonpursuit.com. Never miss an episode. You can also support the show as little as $5 a month. You can do that through patreon.com. But if you love the show, you can support it even more by sharing it with a friend, or maybe even share it with your favorite distributor and see what they think as well. But with that, cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Toodles.
Cheers, y'all.
Pocket sucks.
All right. All right. Well, that was a good one.
That was
Yeah.
Those were very solid questions. I don't know how many you went through to get those, but those were good.
Yeah, I cherry picked my favorites out of there. There's a few good.
Good
ones.
job, Kenny.
That was
Hey.
fun. That was a good one.
I'm surprised you got 2 full shows out of it, to be honest with you.
Oh,
I
you get
almost
more
feel
than
like you could do 2 more. And
I know. I even had this one starred about, why haven't Amazon and Walmart lobbied harder? And
yeah, I saw that one.
I think
Yep.
there was another one even I had about, why not more Amazon and Walmart get into this? And I honestly, I'm pretty sure they have tried. And
Oh,
they just
yeah,
have to try harder.
Yeah, they looked, they're like, yeah, you ain't making any freaking money in this. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I mean, for a while, that was kind of the underlying rumor of why they're buying Whole Foods, is because a lot of them come with, or Amazon that is buying Whole Foods, a lot of them come with liquor licenses, and that was going to be their entry into distributing liquor to the masses. But I don't think anything's ever come of that. But
They're like, we'll just charge $5 more for Prime every year.
Yeah.
That's much easier.
Solid.
Amazon has a fascinating way of running those distribution centers too, if y'all are familiar with that. But they're all run by independent contractors. So the vast majority of people out driving the trucks are not actual Amazon employees, as are the people inside those. So if they don't like what you're doing, you're out. They replace you with somebody else. It's a
Oh yeah, I didn't say it was a
very
great work environment. I just
interesting concept.
I just said they get shit done. That's all I said.
They do, man. They know how to do it.
yeah, I ordered 5 brushes because we didn't have a single brush to brush our kids' hair this morning, and they were at my doorstep by 8 p.m. tonight.
They made it in time for
brushing the
that.
boys' heads with a brush that was broken, didn't even have a handle on it. I'm like, oh my gosh. But you think like you could go straight to the store and grab it, but it's easier to buy it on Amazon at noon and it's at your house by 8 p.m. Like, how can you beat that?
Logistics.
Yeah.
Wild.
It is wild.
Well, I mean,
Could you
that's-
imagine delivering alcohol? Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the returns that we do from Amazon, and it's like
Drizzly
they'll
did
essentially they're like, just keep it. We'll send you something new, and it's like,
Oh,
you imagine you buy a bottle of whiskey, and you're like, I didn't like it, or I didn't, I don't know.
Well, Blake deals with that already, but
That's
it's not
true.
about being there at noon, right? But I think
I
that's
know
sort
that.
of like
Yeah, Blake's got that. If you don't love it, you don't you don't have to pay for a guarantee, right?
Pretty much. I mean, don't popularize that too much, but I don't think we've ever told somebody, well, sorry, we just refund them. The Uber Drizzly thing was interesting. I think they just kind of folded it into Uber Eats instead of having it be a separate app and ecosystem itself. It seems like Uber Eats now is Drizzly just under the Uber Eats umbrella.
Well, I think the problem with Drizzly, and I thought it was a great solution to the retail space, is that you had to have their operating system for inventory, this and that, which most of these stores need this, but a lot of them are just like archaic
No,
systems.
more on
They
the
don't
back
want.
of-
They just have these archaic systems where I don't think they want to track stuff, and then you don't have enough people using that platform, then it's not going to work.
Yep.
Hey,
All right,
Kenny,
let's-
I
I
need
was
to.
gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say we're gonna end the stream here real quick. Thank you everybody that tuned in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Cheers.